All right, hello there everyone. Today we are starting Unit 10 over World War II and also the Holocaust. If you take a look at your new interactive notebook, okay, it'll give you an idea of some of the people we'll be talking about, some of the things we'll be speaking about. Okay, go ahead and at this point, okay, consider your goal for the semester. Hopefully all of you created a SMART goal for semester 2. Okay, I want you to think about, are you meeting your goal? And how can you begin preparing for the semester 2 final exam? The final exam is comprehensive, so we'll have things from the French Revolution, the Industrial Revolution, World War I, right, and then World War II, the interwar years in there as well. Okay, so what are some things that you could maybe start doing, like looking back at your old interactive notebooks or looking back at old study guides? Even if you didn't do them, it may give you an idea of some of the topics that you can start reviewing. All right, your study guide for Unit 10, you will receive 8 out of 8 points if you decide to turn it in. It is not mandatory, but it will certainly help you with any World War II or Holocaust questions on the final exam. So today we are going to be looking at the competing alliances that are going to be fighting during World War II. When we look at this, it helps to take a look at our lecture and remember, okay, that the war didn't just like all of a sudden you wake up and all of a sudden it's, World War II. There were warning signs. One of the major warning signs was the Axis powers being created. And if you remember, alliances was one of our main causes, militarism, alliances, imperialism, nationalism, for World War I, and yet here we are, we see alliances again. So the Axis powers are going to be a partnership of Japan, Italy, and Germany. All three of these governments are totalitarian regimes. Italy and Germany are fascist, where you put the good of the state above all else, and you have one really important leader. All of them, in terms of foreign policy, are willing to use force to get what they want, and they don't care what other people think. Japan invades Manchuria, China. China asks the League of Nations for help. The League of Nations is going to scold Japan, and Japan says, we'll just leave the League of Nations. We don't really like how, right, you're speaking with us, and we don't really care what you think anymore. We are going to go take over land. Italy, similarly, is going to take over Ethiopia. Ethiopia asks the League of Nations for help, and again, the League of Nations doesn't want to get involved in a fight, doesn't want to go to war again, so they leave Ethiopia on their own, and Italy learns, sweet, I can do what I want. And of course, Germany is going to learn from this as well, and soon we'll see, okay, that Hitler will take control of Germany, and he will begin to violate the Treaty of Versailles and have no regard whatsoever what anyone thinks, and he knows the League of Nations is probably not going to stop him because no one in Europe wants a war. So if you're looking at, okay, the Axis powers, you're going to drag and drop the countries over on top of, okay, the country that is in the Axis powers. You may want to Google, right, okay, the shape of Japan or the shape of Germany or something like that if you aren't able to figure it out on your own. Okay, so here we've got Germany. Right, here we've got Japan. Then the government I already mentioned, so you'll want to go back and take a look, okay, what type of government they have. I also told you about their foreign policy right here. And economically, they hate communists. So they are actually a form of capitalism, but only in that it supports and goes towards the well-being of the nation over individuals. So you're not going to make a profit off of the country is going to benefit from you and your company. All right, on the other side you have the allies. So these, France, America, and Britain, right, you'll see this is kind of a replay from the Treaty of Versailles and the Peace Conference of Paris. France and Great Britain are going to join the League of Nations. Of course, America does not. This again takes the teeth sort of out of the League of Nations agreement. And all of these folks have been devastated by not only World War I, France and Britain and the Soviet Union in particular. Also, the Soviet Union went through a communist revolution, and all of them are being affected by the Great Depression. So none of them want to go to war. In terms of government, the top 3, okay, are democratic republics. However, the Soviet Union is not. So under government, you'll want to write, right, with the exception of the Soviet Union, right, they are actually a totalitarian dictatorship led by Stalin. So, yes, you have democracies, you also have a dictatorship. Economy, you have 3 countries, the top 3 that are capitalists. But you also have the Soviet Union, which is communist. Their foreign policy is try to avoid war at all costs. This means that they're going to try a policy of appeasement, which we will talk about in the next slide, right? And that is to do nothing, right? Anytime someone starts pushing, right, towards war or being aggressive or taking land, okay, the League of Nations, these guys, okay, decide in order to keep the peace, they're just not going to do anything, right? And it'll all blow over and it'll all be fine. All right, which one of these does not really fit, okay, from this partnership? And you can see obviously the Soviet Union is kind of like the which of these things is not like the other. Okay, so once you're done with that, you'll drag and drop these over onto the slide. Okay, slide 5 is all about appeasement. Please read right here about the United States actions to try to stay out of the war. Appeasement, okay, is additionally in the lecture, right? Appeasement is, okay, giving in to aggressive demands in order to maintain peace. So Germany, Hitler sees the League of Nations isn't doing anything. Okay, he starts to violate the Treaty of Versailles in order to give Germany a chance at renewal, revival, bringing it back to greatness. He, of course, is going to believe that the German people were actually betrayed by the people, the German government at the time, the Weimar Republic, for signing the Treaty of Versailles. Ultimately, he'll also start to blame the Jews at this point for the failure of Germany in World War I and them being forced to sign the Treaty of Versailles. And he's going to start to tout this idea that the Germans are the master race, and therefore they needed to have living space. They needed to go get more land. They needed to take resources. They needed to put food on their table, right? He's going to do this by rebuilding the military. And, of course, this goes against the Treaty of Versailles, but the League of Nations doesn't do anything about it. They just let him do it because they didn't think it was worth going to a war at that point. Is it really worth stopping him, right, from rebuilding a military? Is it worth all of us going to war? They decided no. Then he moves his military into the Rhineland right up against the border of France, which should have been a warning sign. And again, they decide, nah, it's not worth going to war yet. He then annexes Austria. Austria is willingly, okay, going to add themselves to Germany. Again, he's touting this idea of a master race. Okay, they jump on board. It's not really expansion, but yet it's kind of colonization, which again, okay, is not allowed in the Treaty of Versailles. But right, the League of Nations doesn't do anything about it. They continue to use the policy of appeasement in order to keep the peace. Europe hoped to avoid a war at all costs, and Hitler knew it, and so he kept pushing and pushing and pushing, knowing no one was going to push back. Finally, he is going to actually go into Czechoslovakia. Czechoslovakia calls the League of Nations and says, all right, seriously, where are you? He has taken over our country unwillingly, right? Okay, we have been taken over. It is time to do something. The League of Nations gets together and they decide to just kind of leave Czechoslovakia on its own. Good luck, guys, right? We do not want to go over a war, okay, to a war over Czechoslovakia. Neville Chamberlain is the Prime Minister of Britain. He goes home and tells everyone, go home, get a nice quiet sleep because we avoided war. Winston Churchill will offer a warning at this point and basically tell the world this is not the last we have heard from Hitler. If we keep letting him get away with things, he will keep trying to get away with things. And so at some point, of course, okay, this domino effect will reach people like France and Britain, right? Hitler over here pulling the lever, okay, them crushing countries, and these guys going, it's not affecting us yet. But soon, of course, we know it will. And probably the most famous cartoon here is Hitler walking on the backs of the spineless leaders of democracy, right? These guys who all said, hey, we're going to protect world peace, we're going to protect each other, we're going to protect self-determination, right? And here he is kind of making fun of them, right, and walking across them, and they are not doing anything to stop him. So, how does the war begin? We'll take a look at that in the next lecture. By now, you should be able to, though, finish slide 4 and 5, take 2 screenshots, submit them to Google Classroom, and you're done for the day. Have a good one, guys.